And now, without any further delay, I'd like to turn today's presentation, Personalized Experiences, Building a Powerful and Scalable Digital Foundation, over to your first presenter, Jay Atchison, Vice President of Marketing for R2 Integrated. Jay, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to those of you on the good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast, and I guess good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us for this SiriusDecisions webinar, appropriately titled "Building a Powerful and Scalable Digital Foundation for Personalized Experiences." As Phil said, I'm Jay Atchison, Head of Marketing at R2 Integrated, and focused on marketers, connecting marketers with the expertise they need to really provide increased value to their customers. My counterparts today are Jessie Johnson from SiriusDecisions. She's the leading demand generation analyst there, as well as Danny Dalton, Adobe industry thought leader. So as R2I has been developing these solutions for our clients and partnering with Adobe to activate and optimize what that experience looks like, we wanted to share the expertise with you so we can collectively raise the bar for an optimum personalization experience. So we're hoping today's presentation, you'll walk away from today's presentation with creating a highly customized one-on-one interactions, being able to scale personalization, and being able to deliver a unified customer experience. With that said, I'd like to pass it off to Jessie Johnson.
All right, thank you, Jay, and thank you everyone for having me today. So why are we here? And really the goal of that is talking about audience-centric messaging. So that's really what we're looking to accomplish with our personalization strategies. So audience-centric messaging engages and enables buyers, drives alignment among product marketing and sales, and brings up to a 2x return on investment. We oftentimes think about that personalized experience as taking place on the website. So what's driving our approach to web conversion optimization and the personalization techniques that underlie that? So many B2B websites are still brochureware. Oftentimes they're designed to support the selling process instead of the buying process. But what we found is that user expectations have really changed from base level usability to personalization and adaptation. So the constant evolution of technology and the increase in data availability have raised the user's expectations of what a good website can actually provide. So how do we determine the content that's the best fit for that visitor to the website? Delivering the right content strategy isn't as easy as it used to be. We need to meet our buyers where they are in their journey with the right message at the right time to support buyer knowledge requirements and progress them to the next stage. So we started out by taking a look at the current state of personalization in B2B. So we conducted a survey and collected over 200 responses across 12 vertical industries to get an idea of where and how B2B marketers are using personalization today. 71% of respondents said they were using it for marketing, and 46% said that they were using it for sales. Of those, 17% said they were using it for both sales and marketing. But we wanted to know how they were using it, and it turns out it's for a mix of pilot programs and full programs, with the full programs including website, online advertising, and landing page personalization as expected, and the top pilots being executed were social media, email, and even the direct mail channel. But the interesting note is that half of respondents said they had plans to greatly or significantly increase their spend when it comes to personalization. So this is why we believe personalization is really much more than a buzzword. And its adoption, usage, and importance are going to continue to increase. So 3 things to consider for personalization before diving in at the program and tactic level. And the first is really starting with audience. What personas are prioritized and targeted for personalization? Do we have the content required across the buyer's journey for effective personalization? And what's the best approach to delivering that personalized experience? When evaluating if your organization is prepared for personalization, the first step is to ensure you have defined target segments and their attributes. This involves looking at the different levels of personalization and determining which level should be chosen to enable. Once the target segment has been chosen using specific attributes, content must then be adjusted and prepared. Content should be as relevant as possible to the persona or the level of personalization being targeted, including the buyer stage. And finally, once we've determined the level of personalization, the attributes we're going to be using, and the content requirements, we can then start to assess our technology to understand what dynamic content or personalization capabilities exist or should be obtained. When looking at the capabilities, the type of personalization must be determined to see what's needed to support explicit, implicit, or augmented personalization. There are three important areas to consider when identifying, delivering upon, and executing a personalization strategy. So let's start with strategy and goals. So starting out with our goals for each of the audiences, we need to focus on what we need to do to get us off on the right start. So we need to design our personalization efforts properly, which requires having the right content strategy and an understanding of the data that's available, how much of it is available, and how it should be used. For delivery, it's really about three components: the mix of delivery mechanisms that are in play, and then the personalization rules and timing that those rules are executed and delivered against. And finally, you can't have success without understanding the right return on investment. So organizations that complete this approach at the start of their personalization journey will ensure that they've taken into consideration all the elements required for effective and scalable personalization. So let's take a look more closely at goals. So strategy is all about doing the groundwork to get the right people on board and to develop achievable goals with built-in measurement. Crafting personalization into your marketing programs is something that will require cross-functional support. Executive sponsorship of audience-focused go-to-market strategies, including your personalization approach, will help drive that support. Set a high bar for understanding the needs of your buying audience and communicate how adopting a personalization approach will evolve your program. And share the deployment model and work with a cross-functional team to define business requirements, review system and technology capabilities, as well as gaps, and manage the rollout of program updates required to deliver personalization. In terms of performance, program KPIs should be set upon program creation, and this will help you to spot problems and opportunities for process improvement. So next, we need to take a look at the audience itself. So when people hear personalization, we automatically think about one-to-one personalization, as we see in B2C more often than not. But in B2B, there are varying levels of personalization that can be performed and still be effective. So while personalization can be done at a persona level, it can also be executed at higher levels and still have an impact. For example, programs can be executed at the market level using attributes such as industry, geography, or enterprise size. A level deeper would be at the account level, either for account-based marketing or for marketing to accounts, or a collection of personas that make up a buying group or the function or department of the buyer personas, the buying center, could also be targeted for personalization. So this step is important for organizations to consider as part of their personalization deployment strategy, as it really sets the stage for the rest of the components of the program. So now that we know who we're targeting and why, we can start to design the personalized experience. Starting with our content. So let's take a look at some data. Our study surfaced common approaches to content personalization in use by more than half of the organizations in our survey. In terms of audience, understanding the levels of audience and the level to target with personalization and the associated buyer journey is key to developing personalization programs that nurture buyers through ongoing engagement. For asset types, the program should be supported by a content strategy that defines assets based on an understanding of audience interactions and your objectives for each interaction, as well as knowledge of the right place in order to determine both what types of assets should be created and where those assets should be used. And this leads us to using a content strategy to determine the right asset types. It's also important to consider ways to scale the campaign by creating derivative assets from primary assets, such as blogs and infographics, based on media, white paper, or longer form content assets, and to leverage those campaign assets also for translation and localization as an extension of your personalization strategy. Defining buyer personas helps drive customer-centric innovation and go-to-market strategy. The SiriusDecisions Buyer Persona Framework is a tool for defining B2B buyers' behavioral characteristics, interaction and content utilization, and knowledge requirements. Use persona insights to improve messaging, content, sales enablement, and campaigns. Marketers should consider functional, emotive, decision process, and behavioral attributes when determining what data to leverage for personalization. And these can be used to help inform the messaging elements. So consider the messaging elements that map to each buying stage for the personas you're engaging, as well as content type preferences by stage and by persona. Next, we want to take a look at data. So data is everywhere, and for personalization specifically, organizations need to understand the source and the mix of data and how it will enable or drive their efforts. So we've broken this into 3 categories that marketers should consider for personalization. And the first is explicit. We're all very familiar with this one. It relies on data provided directly by the user to determine what content and interactions should be presented. The next is implicit personalization. This represents the next level of personalization, and it's often deployed in addition to explicit personalization. This type of personalization relies on tracking user behavior across a wide variety of marketing vehicles to infer what type of content to present to the user and when. And finally, augmented data sources. So the use of data that does not come directly from the user to drive personalization decisions represents the most advanced form of personalization, and we refer to this as augmented personalization. So it includes data from third-party data sources, maybe LinkedIn, or other demographic and behavioral data sources. And so with this data, the user profile can be expanded to provide more information that can be used to present more targeted content and interactions. Deploying targeted and personalized demand marketing at scale requires access to sufficient levels of account and contact data. Marketing leaders must assess the completeness of existing data by evaluating attributes in 3 categories: must-have, should-have, and nice-to-have. Knowing what data is available and what gaps exist help marketers prioritize database improvement efforts to support personalization. And marketers should look beyond their core systems for first-party personalization data sources and include activity from organizational platforms as well, including billing, orders, and product utilization. Data can then be characterized as profile data, activity data, or derived data based on where it's used in the marketing process, with different levels of granularity assigned. Now let's put these concepts into action in the context of a demand program plan. Thoughtful consideration of the audience context, message and offer, intensity, and delivery mechanisms can drive personalized and highly relevant interaction experiences for the prospective buyer. The modern demand program must be designed to adapt to buyer signals in real time. Where a program treatment plan was once a controlled workflow with branching logic and a clear endpoint, today's buyer's journey is fluid and dynamic, and interactions must be designed to meet buyer needs instead of the company's needs, and not based on how we've always done things. The SiriusDecisions Buyer Treatment Framework looks at signal, response, and action to treat each buyer differently in their journey and in the context of their buying group and demand unit, as well as their persona, and later at the individual level as we get to know them. Use technology to identify and detect compelling events, buying cycle indicators, and other buying signals. You can associate individuals and behaviors to demand units and leverage that for a personalized strategy. For example, through targeting criteria or a web page entry point, the location of the contact is identified. If one audience member is in Canada and the other is located in the United States, the program owner can already assess the impact of regional regulatory differences that may be considered. Using the title and persona mapping, the program owner can identify the buyer role, a distinction that could impact the value the audience represents at this point in the journey, and inform the information needs for that audience. Based on content interactions, the program owner can then make assumptions of intent and where the buyer is in that journey. This allows the right offers and content assets to be selected to support the buyers through to that next knowledge inflection point. The buyer treatment plan helps marketers map out the relevant buyer signals, determine the most appropriate response and message treatment, as well as the next best action, such as increasing qualification score, routing to a BDR, or adapting a nurture stream for a more accelerated experience. This approach uses internal data sources to personalize program treatment plans and select the most effective offers and delivery mechanisms. Now let's talk about delivery. So we talked about the fact that your asset choices should really be informed by an understanding of the places your buyer targets to gain knowledge about solutions like yours. The other part of the right place equation, however, is the delivery method that's used as a conduit to those places. Choices here are dependent on the data available for each channel and the level of personalization to be delivered within or across channels. One of those methods includes sales-led interaction, requiring the creation and packaging of content appropriate for sales to deliver to one or more personas. The other mechanisms we'll cover here are marketing delivered, including discovery by the buyer, which means personalization on your web page, multiple content versions for self-discovery by one or more personas. And programs may also include a single channel or tactic. So for example, the use of an email campaign, but more often personalization including multiple channels. So perhaps an email campaign as well as content syndication and display advertising retargeting that are all quite personalized for the buyer. There are several different approaches and elements to consider. Personalizing depending on the delivery channel. That could be a personalized website homepage or targeted display ads with a personalized offer, behaviorally triggered email communications, or a direct mail piece that's personalized based on activity from a recent website visit. In order for personalization to be delivered, rules need to be programmed. These rules will execute against a target audience when an action occurs. But with the idea of automation, personalization can often be seen as a man versus machine type of an approach. Manual rules for personalization are when a pre-programmed set of responses dictates what happens next. If you click this, then this specific action will happen. On the other hand, there are programmatic rules where a machine algorithm will dictate what happens for that specific set of actions. If you click this, then this will happen based on what's performing best or what others like you have clicked next, or what your specific journey indicates should happen. It's important to know that this is a spectrum where both types of personalization rules can exist within a program or even within a specific delivery mechanism, like a website homepage versus a specific landing page. Personalization timing addresses where rules are evaluated and executed and can be executed now or planned for later execution. So personalization delivered at a planned interval, such as on a buyer's next visit or their next email in the nurture stream, or even the next time they see an ad via targeting or retargeting. Personalization can also be delivered now in real time, immediately after the buyer takes an action. A personalized experience after the click, or one that's rendered when a web page is loaded or a triggered email. When delivery rules and timing are combined, you can have manual rules delivered at the planned interval or in real time, or you could have programmatic rules delivered at a planned interval or in real time. Selecting the right combination based on the other defined components of personalization in the design element we discussed is important to ensuring success and being able to deliver on the program itself. Driving an effective personalization strategy means marketers need to understand its impact at the program and tactic level. So let's take a look at some key measurements. Like any marketing program, personalization programs should include KPIs created at the point of strategy. In setting those KPIs, think about measurement, which we segment into the classes that you see here. So we have readiness, our preparedness to perform, activity, so the counts of actions that have been taken, the output, which is the results of those actions, and the impact, which is the effects against business goals. This is a sample content performance dashboard for a personalized demand program which addresses the impact of a financial services organization's current insurance campaign content on demand creation and sales pipeline. So we're looking at activity, output, and impact for the most part around content consumption, conversion, channels, and asset types, and looking at content influence on sales. Taking a look at the attributes on the right, we've taken account channels, asset types, journey stages, and geographies into consideration. These metrics show focus on the solution phase of the journey, perhaps at the expense of content for other phases, and email appears here to be the strongest performing channel, likely associated with North America performance. In terms of content influence on pipeline, we can see that the personalized insurance program makes up a big portion of the organization's MQLs. And while conversion rates to SALs is a bit below average, conversions to late-stage pipeline and wins is better than average. So we can see that things are on the right track. We can deduce from this, though, that more focus may be needed on earlier stage content for this persona. So let's recap some best practices for B2B personalization. So starting with the SiriusDecisions personalization deployment model. At the strategy phase, we'll start by identifying the goals that personalization should accomplish for the organization, and next determine the audience. So are we personalizing at the account, buying group, persona, or one-to-one level, or is it a combination? And next, we want to take a look at design. So again, requiring a focus on both content strategy and data usage. Content requirements must be driven by the personalization program goals and consider realistic content development capability. For effective personalization, organizations must understand the potential sources and mix of data and how data will enable or drive their efforts. Delivering an effective personalization program requires considerations of 3 elements: the delivery mechanism mix, rules, and timing, in context of the program strategy and design. To ensure implementation of the right technology, organizations must base their delivery mechanism choices on audience consumption and behavior. And finally, personalization timing specifies when rules are evaluated and executed and can refer to immediate or later session delivery. And like any marketing program, personalization programs should include the KPIs that were defined as part of the overall strategy. And though personalization success can be measured via short-term activity metrics, understanding how personalization is performing across all 4 metric classes provides a comprehensive evaluation of the program. Organizations must also analyze metrics to understand how to optimize the personalized experience and deliver better outcomes by making appropriate changes to the actions, processes, and tactics that are used. Every phase of personalization contains critical elements that must be considered and addressed. All too often, organizations jump right into personalization delivery, focusing on technology considerations without properly defining the strategy and design of the program. Organizations that implement the SiriusDecisions personalization deployment model can gain a clear understanding of the various components required to deliver personalization before initiating delivery, increasing their chances of personalization success. And the model can also be used to assess gaps in existing personalization programs. And as always, when implementing a new approach or technique, approach personalization from a crawl, walk, run perspective. So you're continuously building on a solid foundation of audience insights, content, and program planning. Now let's take a look at some of the technology capabilities that can be leveraged to deliver a personalized experience. Starting with content. So consider the current state of your content. Is there sufficient content available for each buying journey stage for each of the personas that you're engaging? Are we able to target based on industry or persona or other data attributes that are important? And does it need to be localized? Next, take a look at core technology in the marketing technology stack and evaluate adoption of existing personalization capabilities, starting with marketing automation, CRM, and integration between these core systems. Next, look at extended technology capabilities for predictive, intent, and any personalization point solutions in the stack. And finally, consider leveraging existing capabilities that can be used for reporting and insights from click to close. And now that we've walked through the building blocks for an effective B2B personalization strategy, let's take a look at some examples. Danny?
Thanks, Jesse. My name is Danny Dalton. I'm with Adobe and part of our industry strategy group, and I get to be the voice of B2B within Adobe, both externally and internally, making sure we're doing the right things by our B2B customers, and worked for years with our B2B customers, observing and helping them execute some of these strategies that Jesse's talked about. What I want to do is give a few real-life examples of B2B personalization. Some of them are very simplistic and basic and good starting points and still yield great results, and others are a little more mature and take a lot of time and effort to build out a program and able to execute that level of personalization. Before I go in, one common framework that we use when we're talking about personalization is identity, interest, and intent. You can personalize based on any of those. Who are you? What are you interested in? And what are you trying to do? You can answer even one of those. You can begin to personalize. In B2B, a common starting point for personalization is industry or account-based personalization. And so those were some of the examples that we wanted to go into. The first one I'm going to talk about is Grainger. Although they have obviously a robust B2C practice, they derive a lot of revenue and business from their B2B. Go-to-market model. So Grainger wanted to show visitors, particularly their B2B customers, that they recognized and had an established relationship with them. I recognize you, I see you, I know you, we know each other. They suspected that this would really increase their engagement on the website. And so Grainger was able to identify the company a visitor was from based on their IP address, a reverse IP lookup. Grainger began personalizing their homepage simply by industry. So they would tailor the content just by the industry that that company was associated with. In a second activity, they tried doing the same thing, but instead of industry, they personalized by company name. Again, these are both great personalization efforts. Industry and company name are both part of that identity personalization, and both have a history and wide adoption as effective personalization. Interestingly here, when they pitted them against each other, personalizing by company name was more effective for them than personalizing by industry. And this highlights the need not just for personalization, but also to make sure you have the ability to test the effectiveness of your personalization, to know what works and what doesn't work for your customer base. For another customer, this might have been completely reversed, where the account-based personalization was more effective. But Grainger found for them, their customers reacted better when the specific company was identified and called out on those home pages. The results were great. They found a lift in engagement, and more importantly, a lift in the registration and completion rate based on this account-based personalization. This, again, is a relatively straightforward personalization effort for a B2B company. Here it's powered by, the underlying technology were Adobe's Analytics and Adobe's Target solutions. The next example that I want to get into is with CA Technologies. Again, a similar principle, on-site personalization. CA Technologies wanted to increase their engagement and, again, more importantly, their lead form completion. They had the hypothesis that by personalizing the homepage experience for visitors, they would increase that registration and that lead form completion rate. What they did is they identified 28 key accounts. So again, we're talking about that buzzword of account-based marketing or account-based personalization. They identified their top 28 key accounts and targeted and built out these personalized experiences for those accounts. In this case, rather than testing whether industry or company personalizing by those was more effective, CA Technologies delivered an experience personalizing both by industry and company in the same experience, and then compared that with their previous generic unpersonalized experience. The experience personalized with account and industry was far more effective than their generic experience in generating form completions, a 323% increase in form completions just by personalizing some of the content with that firmographic data based on the industry of the visitor and the specific company of the visitor. Again, this example, the underlying technology was Adobe Analytics and Adobe's Target solution. It's worth noting, though, that if you're able to deliver this level of personalization on-site, it's only a short hop to do the same off-site via targeted display ads, emails, other channels, many of the channels that Jesse was covering. You typically need a DMP in order to do that most effectively. In Adobe, our DMP is Adobe's Audience Manager solution. But this simple personalization based on industry or company name or simple identity data can be done off-site almost just as easily as on-site. The next example I want to give is a little different because it illustrates a few specific points. What we're going to do is we're going to go through 3 stages or 3 waves that SAP went through in their personalization efforts. And again, Jesse highlighted the importance of building this out as a crawl, walk, run. And a lot of times I think we all are in awe when we're shown these really cool examples of this highly personalized and tailored experience and customer journey, when the reality is most of us struggle to even do those simple personalization efforts like account-based or company name. And so what I want to do is take you through what SAP did at a very simple level and then through where they were able to do a very robust account-based experience for a specific customer. So SAP identified a few of their priority accounts that they wanted to pilot for personalization. Part of the reason doing it that way was to justify investment in their personalization program by demonstrating its effectiveness on a few specific accounts. But the other reason was also to demonstrate to their field what they could do and the value that it would drive this level of personalization in handing everything off to the sales teams. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight SAP's interactions with visitors from GE. This is going to focus on their attempt to target GE and personalize an experience for a GE employee. And again, that's identified by the visitor's reverse IP address lookup. So this simple personalization, what they did, SAP wanted to drive GE's awareness of an engagement with SAP's specific solutions that they felt were going to be relevant for GE. To meet that goal, they developed a personalized homepage experience for GE. And that experience simply had a banner with a personalized message welcoming them from GE. GE and SAP, imagine a better world together. It identified GE's company and delivered that simple personalization. This was a great success, 900% increase in click-through rate just by doing that. They then had a landing page that was personalized again with a copy of that GE name. So you come to the home page, you see GE and SAP, then you click through, and again, you're still seeing GE-specific content. They higher engagement, increase in page views, and increase in downloads, or those defined conversions. So they took it to the next level. They had great success with that, went to the next stage. And they said, okay, well, now we're going to focus on that landing page. We're going to build a jump page. They wanted to support sales and drive awareness for GE in solution areas that were highly relevant for GE. This would help SAP satisfy needs from its various lines of business and solution areas. They also want to make the previous experience even more immersive and personalized for their GE customers. To do this, they added this jump page with links to 3 key solution areas, which led the GE visitor to those associated landing pages. The landing pages themselves were essentially a generic solution page, but did include quote-unquote personalized information for a salesperson associated with their sales area, including a picture of the sales representative and an email address and a phone number. Interestingly, when SAP went back to look at the performance of this new personalized content and treatment, they saw overall engagement decrease. They saw slightly higher click-through rates, but overall engagement with the web page, page views, downloads, registration was slightly below what it was before. And this is an important lesson. Just as important as demonstrating those wins, it's important to learn and accept and realize that not all personalization ideas pan out. And the important part is to learn from each experiment and try something else. So their idea of this personalized jump page that would take to landing pages, and that jump page had these 3 specific areas that they wanted to personalize for GE, that didn't work. So they went back and all throughout this process, they're increasing their maturity, they're building out new capabilities, the program is maturing. And so they went back, and we'll call this wave 3 or phase 3, now more mature in their personalization efforts. SAP moved beyond just identity personalization. So think back, all they were doing was saying, hey, we see you're from GE, we want to partner with you, GE, here's some GE content. Now they're moving beyond that, and they say, well, we're going to look also at intent and interest data. SAP conducted a deep analysis to determine GE's preferences and interests using Adobe's analytics tool to identify top pages, top product pages, lines of business pages, communities, blog posts, asset downloads. What were all the top ones for GE, people coming from GE? They also worked with their field team and marketing teams for North America to learn where GE was in the sales cycle. What content was GE asking about? What were the deals on the table? To get a general sense of what was happening with GE. SAP then consolidated all these learnings and built, with Adobe's Experience Manager tool, built an extremely personalized landing page experience for GE visitors. The page had a personalized banner, specific assets and solution topics that were relevant and had already proven successful with GE, training topics that were relevant for GE, free trial software that others from GE had expressed interest in, training topics, solution links, online community topics, and the actual contact info for the GE account manager, not just in the region or for that solution, but who was the GE account manager that they could reach out to immediately. They delivered this experience, what we would call an account-based experience for GE, based on that identity, interest, and intent data. The results were dramatic this time. 900% increase in click-through rate, increased engagement, and increased page views. And you see that this is a far more mature level of personalization than just simply identifying the company and saying, hi company, hi GE, we see you, we know you. This is actually knowing the customer, understanding their preferences, understanding where they are in the sales cycle and what they are trying to do, and delivering an experience that's tailored based on that understanding and that relationship. And again, the results spoke for themselves in this case. The next step after this, though, is to scale that process and automate that process across all their accounts. The companies doing this today that have scaled it out and are doing this on an automated basis have robust technology platforms in order to execute this and deliver this not just on site but across channels via emails, display ads, and other any channel. They also have carefully defined account-based marketing and personalization programs. Everything that Jesse spoke about, laying that foundation, that's crucial to be able to deliver this highly, highly personalized experience. And then they also have the attribute of close partnerships with their sales teams. Those insights that the sales teams bring are essential, and vice versa. The data and insight that the marketing teams provide when you're at this level of personalization accelerate and improve that sales cycle and that sales journey. Again, these examples are intended to show a few examples of actual B2B personalization in the real world that has been done. Some of the examples and practices are relatively simple, using either identity, interest, or intent data to slightly change the experience. Other examples are much more mature, pulling identity, interest, and intent data all together, whether explicit, implicit, or augmented, as Jesse stated, and whether they come from internal or external sources to create a completely personalized experience. Regardless of your maturity, however, personalization, and even that simple personalization, is worth the effort. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jesse.
All right, thank you, Danny. Those are some great examples. So in closing today, some action items to keep in mind is to really start out with organizational buy-in. So what are we trying to accomplish? What teams, what functions need to be involved? And then moving forward from there, making sure that we're able to socialize our approach to personalization and what that means for the organization and all of those functional areas that will be involved. And then starting out with our strategy, or that foundational piece. So taking a look at the SiriusDecisions personalization deployment model as a good place to get started here, thinking about audience and goals, personalization design, the data that's required to execute, and how we're going to measure return on that personalization effort. And this also helps us avoid that creep factor. So none of us want to get that email, 30 seconds later I see you're on the website and you're looking at X. I think Y would be interesting. That's a little bit creepy. So keeping in mind the planned intervals, the rules and timing to make sure that we are delivering personalization in a way that's responsive to buyer needs rather than really focused on that creep factor. I know who you are and I see what you're doing. And then for sales, making sure that sales understands how personalization is being deployed not only in marketing, but within sales assets and interactions as well. And then working together with marketing to continue to refine audiences and requirements for that personalized experience.
So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time today and hope you found this content valuable. It doesn't look like we have any questions at this time. I'd like to say a quick thank you to our partners from SiriusDecisions and Adobe. And if you have any immediate questions, please feel free to reach out to us at R2I via our website or the email address listed on the screen. And otherwise, slides will be made available following today's call. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.